So you can do it, but just don't expect whatever I do, you know. It'd be whatever it is. The goal isn't to try to chase views or chase the dollar
Listening to
signs or do any of that stuff.
VORW.
Operating costs, but it's not.
As I work
You're
on
not
the
there to
pencil.
sit there and sit on a pile of money or whatever.
See if it'll make noise. Working on this project, and I'll just try to do like little edits on the character here. Now I'm just checking the audio on the screen. Now I'm just checking the audio. Can't if it'll play.
So you can do it, but just don't expect whatever I do.
Yeah.
You know.
I do play.
Whatever it is.
Why if I turn the fan on? Do you hear that? Because it's hot.
Do any of that stuff. Operating costs, but it's not. You're not there to sit there and sit on a pile of money. Trying to chase views or chase the dollar signs or do any of that stuff. Operating costs, but it's not. You're not there to sit there and sit on a pile of money. Trying to chase views or chase the dollar signs or do any of that stuff. Operating costs, but it's not.
Alright. Go back to listening to that though. Go back to history and play no. Here we go.
We are getting the whole team again.
Whatever. I'm just doing the show to do it. Have fun with it. And I think for a time I tried to make the show, or, you know, I almost tricked myself into thinking it had to be this structured, it had to be a certain way, it had to be this, had to be, you know, this time frame, I had to do this at this point, and so on. But I realized, you know, when looking back at the vision of the channel, is this why I made the channel? Is this why I did it? No. The whole point I made this is that I could do whatever I want, and not have to worry about affecting the other YouTube channel, which, you know, with no exaggeration, you do have to do the videos like your life depends on it. But the whole point of this is just to kind of be more casual and not have anything so rigid and structured. So that's number one. But as I was analyzing things, I figured, well, I mean, I've been spending massive amounts of time on the coronavirus, right? It's just a big interest of mine. I mean, I think that it's just, it has the possibility, you know, I think of being one of the greatest, you know, I think it could be a pandemic on the, there's that possibility it could be like Spanish flu, like the 1918 influenza pandemic. I'd say that's unlikely, but the fact that that potential even exists, I think should be downright concerning. And I just, you know, I always enjoy international events, current affairs, all that stuff. You know, unfortunately, so much of what's going on in the world is morbid. It just doesn't really, you know, work with what I do on the other channel.
I'm trying to edit this scar.
Again, because I've just been thinking about, you know, this rigidness. For some cases, I felt like I can't spend too much time on this because the show is supposed to be more varied. Well, who said it's supposed to be more varied? You know, no one. I'm just making that up, and I'm limiting myself. So anyway, I decided to just dedicate more time to this because, again, I'm just until the situation calms down, I'm just going to talk about it more. But in the meantime, you also understand you can do what you want, but you shouldn't expect people to be forced to like or appreciate what you do. Don't sit there and talk about COVID-19, that's the official name for it, and expect the world to listen and say, this is the best thing I've ever heard, or whatever. You don't expect that. So you can do it, but just don't expect results may vary. And yeah, I understand not everyone is interested, not everyone's concerned, so on and so forth. I get it. So that's why I'm just doing this show, where I'm not really going to talk about it all that much, just talk for a little bit. And then this will be like, VORW, the non-serious version, where, I don't know, just, it's a stream of consciousness, just talking about things that aren't explicitly, maybe here and there, but not explicitly related to the virus. Whereas the other shows, it's going to be more dialogue, exclusively about that, probably. But that's why I'm just doing this freeform. And one other thing that I was thinking about. Now, sometimes when these thoughts come in, it's like, it's like, should I share them or should I not? And I figure, what the heck, I'll say it, because then it's at that point where you can, your mind is not dead set on something. So it's not even, the likelihood just isn't there. But there's like that possibility that you could do it, possibility that you won't. Right? If I don't, nothing's gonna change. But if I do, right, it's only responsible to let people know in advance, so I have nothing wrong with that. Going forward, now again, I can't say whether I'm going to do it or not. It just depends on how things go. I might take a break from doing the podcast for a little bit. Not too long, just, I don't know, a couple weeks. Just to recharge the batteries, that's all that there is to it. I think sometimes when people, and this is really why I was thinking about not saying it, when people say that they're going to take a break from something, whether individuals intentionally or don't, it always leads to speculation, right? You hear, taking a break, well, then it asks the question, well, why? Right? Why? And then people get all skeptical, is this really why? Is this not? And so on and so forth. Well, really, it's just to recharge the batteries. Again, I've been doing the show, in this form, for, about a year straight. Before I did this YouTube channel, right, here's a little backstory. Before I put it on YouTube and all these, podcast platforms, the show, was still going. But it was on the radio. It went out on SoundCloud, and it went out on the international shortwave. And, why not? Like I said, this is just gonna be about whatever. Let's, how about we go all the way back? Heck, this Thursday, it's 9 years since I've been doing the YouTube, so if there's a time to crack open the metaphorical books and retrospectively examine things, this is it right here. God, 9 years. So, in short, I'm just taking a break because I want to. That's it. Just wanna just take a break, recharge the batteries, and then I'll get back into it. So there's the short answer. If you don't want to hear the whole story I'm about to go into. But to get into the history of this show, why not? So, let's just go back to the entire lineage. I started VORW originally in early 2014. And it was in a similar format as it is now, but of course, you're a different person, especially 6 years back. You're still young, I'm still young now, but you know how it is, you change a lot. but it was a show. I just got to the microphone, talked for however long, and that was it. So, I mean, it
We're
wasn't
doing
just
this for
structured, but
hours,
it was just like a stream of
all day,
consciousness, so
trying to get the stuff right.
started doing that in early 2014.
And I
As a
know it's
talk
not
show.
perfect,
It was
it's,
just uploaded to the Report of the Week channel, and this was back when
which is good.
the
It's my
Report of
first
the Week
game,
had, it was very
so I
small,
wanted
you know,
to,
a couple thousand subscribers.
you know,
maybe
be
10,
as rough as it can look,
15,000,
you know, but still
I
have
mean, that's still
do what I
sizable,
can.
but, you know,
Because if I keep
the
picking
grand
at it,
scheme of things compared to the
I will grow.
1.8 million now, it's, you know,
that
it's
is
smaller.
a experiment.
But
Not experiment.
I was doing the
Experience
talk
that
show,
I've
and eventually,
learned when
it was
I'm
again
working on
similar,
my
just talk about
cartoon.
whatever, then read some
If you don't know,
listener
when I started
messages,
working on
and
my
that.
cartoon, they was rough,
And
really rough. I even
I did that
like started over in
all
my
the way up
story and
until
made
early
another channel.
2015.
I started the story over,
So
and even
about a
then it
year.
was still rough.
When
And
I
now
branched out
today,
and did a second show.
it is a lot
So it was two
better.
shows going side
It's
by
still a
side,
little
right?
rough,
Very
but
similar
it's a
to
lot
today.
better than what it
There
was.
was the talk show
And
online,
from my past
and then I
experience,
branched
because I've
out
been working on my
and did a
cartoon for
broadcast
years,
on shortwave in early
is that
2015.
things
That's when the
take
radio
time.
version of VORW was born.
Changes take time.
And I got on radio station WBC.
Do your best potential today, and then tomorrow
You want to
you'll
go
be
up
greater.
to your past and sort some shit out? That's dope.
My all-time top thought.
And I just played some music. And I remember I was on twice a week, from 11 p.m. to midnight, on 5110 kilohertz.
Yeah, for a minute now.
It was a 50 kilowatt transmitter. The coverage area was alright. Yeah, it wasn't a perfect signal. I mean, the stations I'm on now get better coverage, but, you know, I couldn't afford much, so you only get what you can. But, I mean, it was a dream of mine to get on the shortwave. And the fact that, you know, I was able to get out there, be able to have a show on this medium that was just so incredible to me. And the fact that, you know, there it was in the middle of the night. You could do your own show. You could play and say whatever you wanted. You had that freedom. Didn't have to worry about algorithms. Didn't have to worry about monetization. Didn't have to worry about any of that. You know, as long as you record this show, pay your bill, they're going to turn the transmitter on and just fire it out across the atmosphere, and whoever listens. That's just the beauty of it all. You know, it's just true freedom to do what you want to do. And I'd play the music, and it makes me wonder truly about shortwave. I wonder, you know, because it's a tough thing. Part of me thinks that shortwave was really even more popular back in 2015 than it is now, and it seems like it wasn't that long ago, you know? But I think things have changed even then. Fewer people might use it today. I mean, I think that goes without saying in parts of the world like India, where, you know, the BBC, which is usually a good indicator of the relevance of shortwave. If the BBC still targets your part of the world, people still listen to shortwave. But in India, they just dropped their broadcasts in Hindi, and I think that's just a sign of the times that, you know, shortwave is definitely in decline in India now. That used to be a huge bastion for radio still. Used to be like 50 stations from All India Radio just providing like domestic coverage, you know, like AM stations, but on the shortwave. Had all these stations from Pakistan blasting across the border. You know, all these different groups, you know, political, mainstream news, religious, etc., broadcasting to India. You still get that, don't get me wrong, but now, you know, you see changes. It's like the amount of those domestic stations used to be maybe 50, now there's just 20, which again, still means there's still people listening, but not as many, right? All India Radio, their main national channel, left the airwaves. And, you know, now the BBC discontinued their broadcasts in Hindi. Now, English still continues, you know, but Hindi, it doesn't anymore. And it's not like no one listened to those broadcasts. I mean, I saw so many articles online about people very, very upset at that. But I just think it's just a sign that, it's still in decline. But I mean, I remember doing that broadcast from 11 p.m. to midnight. Again, not even on a very strong transmitter. And I mean, even then, you would hear from people all over the country. I remember one of the first emails I ever got was from someone all the way in California. And this transmitter was in Maine. I mean, that's a huge distance. I remember they'd get emails from California, from, I think, Arkansas, from Michigan, Pennsylvania, New York, Missouri, South Carolina. I mean, all over the country still. Again, this was kind of getting toward the, midnight. I mean, now in 2020, on the one broadcast that I do 4 times a week, you still get that type of feedback, but bear in mind, the signal is, exponentially, it's like 30 times stronger. And the coverage area is massive, and the power is higher. Makes me wonder, though, is this nothing to gauge it off of? I wasn't on a higher power transmitter, then I can't say, well, is the correspondence the same, or is it different? I don't know, just food for thought. It makes you wonder, it's one of those changes. Anyway, I got caught up in a tangent, but that's the whole purpose of this airing, just to talk. So, I did the music show, along with the talk show online. And the music show I did all the way from January until July 2015. But because, again, I just didn't have that much money, I wasn't able to do it anymore. And I discontinued it in July 2015. Still did the talk show. Continued it regularly into 2016. In 2016, I did a couple one-off shortwave broadcasts, here and there for fun, but nothing regular. Still did the talk show, again on the YouTube, same format. And did the talk show all the way into early 2017, early mid-2017, when I decided to take a break from that. The music show on the shortwave returns regularly in late 2016, and it's been on the air ever since, so there's been a lot of longevity to that. Every single week I've done a new music show. As a matter of fact, recently I've actually upped the production. Now I do 4 of those music shows a week, 4 hours, compared to what just used to be 1 hour for years. Now it's 4 hours. The production of that has really gone up big time. But it's so much fun to do. It's, if you enjoy it, it's not always work. It's just you're having fun. And, not to say that it's not work, but, you're enjoying your time that you spend on it. Anyway, so in early 2017, I took a break from doing the talk show. And on YouTube, on the Report of the Week channel, starting in early 2017, I took the break from it, and it never really came back after that. Because just, a lot of new people were coming to the channel, they weren't interested in it, and again, you can't control what people like or what they don't, it's alright. And it just hurt the algorithm. The YouTube gods, they didn't like it. And then you would have to make decisions. It'd be like, well, do I make it public and notify all the subscribers, and then it hurts the channel even more? When you're trying to do this, for a living, these are tough decisions. Or do you make it unlisted so that it doesn't hurt the channel anymore, but no one sees it? It's like a lose-lose situation. And it's like, well, what's the point anymore? It's like, if it's only going to hurt me, why bother? So I took a break from doing it on the YouTube, and it needed to be done. But the talk didn't die. Instead, I kind of migrated it, and I incorporated a bit of discussion on the shortwave broadcast, which again, at the same time in 2017
Goddamn camera
was
speed.
going every week. So instead of just the non-stop music and shout-outs, I would take the first, 10 to 30 minutes of the 60-minute broadcast and talk. It would be about whatever I wanted to talk about, But it would incorporate that discussion into the music show. Okay? That format existed up until February of 2019. So, it existed all the way through 2017, 2018, and into early 2019. And it worked out good. People liked the balance of the talk and music. It was like, again, it went out on SoundCloud and on the shortwave, so you didn't just need a radio to hear it. And it was a good balance, because the people who wanted to hear the music, they got to hear the music. People who wanted to hear the talk could hear the talk. The talk was always at the beginning, so then they could tune out or exit if they didn't like the music. And, the people who liked the music, again, the talk wasn't too long, so they could still get to their tunes. And the people who liked both, they got both of them, right? So it's like a best of both worlds type of thing. But unfortunately, in 2019, there were some issues. New copyright restrictions came into effect, and I wasn't able to have the music on SoundCloud anymore. And that was a huge issue. Because, again, if people didn't listen on the radio, then they listened on SoundCloud. And, tens of thousands of people caught the show on SoundCloud. Well, now you can't host it anymore, and you can't host it anywhere with the music. So what do? Well, I didn't want to give either up, so you had to split it into two shows. And, it was a tough decision, but it needed to be done. Right? The music still continued on the shortwave. The talk now was separated, maybe expanded upon, and just put online only. And that's where it's been ever since. The music shows just go out on the shortwave and on TuneIn, which is syndicated by some of the stations. This streams live, though, not archive. And now I am able to archive some of the music shows. I mean, I have them all archived on my computer anyway. I don't want to lose them, but now I've been able to archive them on the Patreon. If you fork over a couple bucks, you can listen to all of them, and it's just a way to help keep the radio show going, because again, the bills are still there, and you gotta find a way to keep it alive. But then the talk show is just, its own thing, and it's just here on YouTube, and on the other platforms too, iTunes, Spotify, etc., etc. But, going forward, when you've been doing things so often, sometimes you just want to take a little bit of a break. I mean, for people that might say, oh, taking a break, you shouldn't take breaks. Well, I mean, for people who just do work, it's called a vacation. It's the same exact thing. There's no difference, same exact thing, just a different term. It's always funny, though. You could be saying the exact same thing, you just use a different term for it, and all of a sudden it changes the impression. Instead of being a lazy bastard, you're justified. Oh yeah, enjoy the vacation. It's funny how it is, just psychology. But that's really what it would be. And again, I haven't made up my mind on it, but if I do, I'll let you all know, when I do. But I don't know, might take a couple weeks off, might take a month off, we'll see what happens. Maybe I won't. I would say it all depends on also what happens with the coronavirus. I mean, we'll just have to see. And, the coronavirus shows, I just do them out of passion. It's every last show that I do with that gets demonetized and pulled from the algorithm too, because the World Health Organization and YouTube, they really tightened up what they really want to show people on it. That type of stuff is really scary when you hear it, when you see it happen. It does, but you see it put into practice. That's why radio is important, free information, but it's their site. They can do whatever they want.
Nah, I ain't gonna do that.
I just do them as a labor of love, because it's something I've been thinking about tremendously. I'll just record it and get the message out to whoever listens. I mean, if it's one person, it's one person, but that's not no one. It's just done for fun. So I do all the shows. They're just done to talk. I mean, it's not, like I said, it's not life or death or any of that. I just do these because I want to. So, if you want to take a break, take a break. If you want to do a show every day, do the show every day. It's for you to do what you want to do with it. That's what it's all about. This is VORW. Zenko Ice Slider is a tile-based puzzle game where you get from point A to point B by sliding through the board. Zenko is a fun pastime for people who enjoy problem-solving, sliding puzzles, brain games, reasoning skills, and fun challenges. Every level you'll get a board with different types of tiles like ice, walls, holes, and fragile tiles. In the board you will also get some creatures that have to be placed in the correct tile for the board to be solvable. For example, one creature works as a wall. Once you have placed the pieces in the right place, you swipe to move Zenko in that direction. He'll slide on the board and stop upon hitting walls on its path to the goal. Now currently there are 2 modes to play the game. Adventure mode is a set of 4 worlds of 40 levels each, where new tile types and creatures are introduced as you progress. This makes for a fun, dynamic gameplay evolution as new mechanics are introduced. Puzzle of the Day mode has new levels added each day. Levels may include any of the tile types and creatures from Adventure mode. Every map has an optimal move count, which, when met, will give you a 3-star rating for that level. Now, any extra moves, and you'll get less stars. You can find Zenko Ice Slider on Google Play Store for Android, and soon in Apple's App Store. That's ZENKO-Ice Slider. If you enjoy the game, feel free to leave a review as well. And if you have any feedback or comments, this would greatly help the developers improve their product and build better ones in the future. The game also has some pretty nice music. Feel free to check it out again on Google Play and soon on Apple's App Store. ZENKO Ice Slider, that's Zenko Ice Slider. We all have nightmares. They happen. I'm sure we don't particularly like them. But let me tell you about a really interesting thing that the Henson brothers did. They took something that I think we oftentimes look upon very negatively, something that can cause us anxiety, that keeps us up at night, and they made something really cool and really interesting out of it. That's why I'd like to present to you The Nightmare Parlor. This is a new series that is going out on the Henson Brothers YouTube channel. Now, in the Nightmare Parlor project, they collect the weirdest, creepiest, and most haunting dreams had by their YouTube subscribers. In every episode, they exhibit a few of the most mesmerizing dreams that have been shared with them. Using various audio-visual techniques, they try to capture the ambiance of the dream and bring the most truthful depiction to your YouTube screen. They take something that happens to so many of us, they bring it to life, and they make something really neat out of it too. You can find them by searching the Henson Brothers on YouTube, that's Hensen Brothers, or by searching the Nightmare Parlor. Viewers can make their submissions of their dreams that they would like to have recreated on this channel by going into the video description of their newest upload, and there they'll find a very easy form they can use to make their submission and really become a part of the show in the most literal sense. I think it'll be interesting for all lovers of horror. Check them out, the Henson Brothers on YouTube with the Nightmare Parlor. So anyway, wrapping up the show, just want to give a few other comments, a few other little, pieces of feedback. Number one, I think I did mention it earlier in the show, that it is the 9-year anniversary of the main YouTube channel, the other one, the Report of the Week. It's still, sometimes the way that time is, it's so funny. You look back, you can't believe that it was 9 years ago. I just can't believe it. I never would have thought that I would be here right now. That I would be doing this full time. That this would be, what I do. The amount of people that it reaches, the amount of people that it impacts. How long I've been able to keep it going. It's incredible. 9 years. I cannot believe it. I don't have any words for it. Sometimes I know from one year to the next, you could almost sound like a broken record with the same spiel, because your thoughts might not really change. And, it certainly doesn't feel like a year has passed since the last anniversary. I know a year from now, I'm still going to be here. I'm still going to be doing it. And I know I'll have a lot more to say then, but just for this 9-year anniversary, I think most importantly, if you have an idea, and it might not seem like much, might not seem like you're doing all that much, it might not seem like a huge, massive thing, but if you feel motivated, if you feel inspired, if you want to do something, maybe if you want to do videos, if you want to do podcasts, if you want to do radio shows, if you want to do writing or drawing or whatever it is, whatever pursuit you want to follow through with. If you feel motivated and you feel inspired, go for it. As long as it's not hurting anyone or harming anyone, go for it. Give it a shot. You never know where it's going to take you. One of the best pieces of advice I can give, especially when it comes down to YouTube. The site was a very, very different place 9 years ago when I started the channel. I think a lot of people realize that. A lot of people understand that. And I think now a lot more people start a YouTube channel with hopes that it's going to get to a certain number.
Now for the fun part, dressing him up.
Maybe with the intention that it'll get big and that it'll get to the point where it becomes sustainable, to the point where it ends up being something that one can do full time. I know it's a lot of people want to. I have lots of people who are aspiring YouTubers. But I think one thing that gets to us a lot, the numbers are important, of course, but we get focused on them too much. We look at the analytics, we look at the statistics, we look at the likes or the comments or the dislikes, and I think we end up chasing the numbers more than we end up doing what we really want to do in terms of creating content. Instead of following your passion and making the video you want to make, you try to fit a certain mold, you try to do something because you see other people doing it, you try to copy them. You think, well, if I want this video to get views, it has to be like this, it has to be like that. But as a result, sometimes they get narrowed down into this certain frame, into this certain type of content. And what might have been great ideas or originality gets thrown out the door because it might not seem mainstream.
That's
trying to fit a certain mold.
Not good. That's not what I want.
So many other individuals are doing the very same thing.
Shit.
The video you might have worked.
This is a small ass cat. I never realized how small he was.
In a sea of other voices. Be yourself. Be genuine.
Never realized how small this motherfucker was.
that you want to make. Remember that this is your channel. These are your videos. You are the one in control. And do with them as you please. And most of all, one of the most important things I recommend,
hang on, he might perform better now.
Have fun with them. Exercise your creativity. And remember this. Even if you don't get a ton of views,
something wrong with his arm. I don't know what it is.
Even if you don't get tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of views, maybe you only get a couple dozen, or even just a dozen. That does not equal zero. Your content still got out there, and it still made impressions on a number of people who are just like you and me. Sometimes we get caught up in the numbers. Sometimes we get caught up in the statistics. We see these channels with these huge view counts. And then you see just a couple views here and there, and it feels like nothing. But that's just not true. If you enjoy the content that you're making, you feel inspired, you feel motivated, have fun with it, don't give up, because you just don't know what the future will hold for you. I started out these videos in early 2011 just for fun. You know, I started out the channel just as something to do on a Sunday afternoon. That's why I called it the Report of the Week. It was supposed to just be an energy drink review that I did for fun every Sunday. Never in a million years would I ever had envisioned it to get to where it is today. To everyone out there who is maybe doing the YouTube or going about a creative pursuit, keep it up. Do what you enjoy doing, do what you want to do. Have fun. I wish you all the very best. Just a few thoughts that I wanted to impart, just in reflection from 9 years. A couple little thoughts here and there. I wanted to read a couple real short emails. So let's just give it a shot. If you want to send in any feedback, you can vorwinfo@gmail.com. I have an email coming in from Joanne in San Diego, regular listener of the shortwave broadcasts, but also the online podcast. It says, I was able to compare the Carl's Jr. Beyond Burger, Famous Star, and the BK Impossible Whopper. So these are two plant-based burgers. And she says, I think I prefer the texture of the Impossible Burger to the Beyond Burger. The Beyond is more mushy and soft, like the texture of the bread filler in a meatloaf. Both don't have much flavor, so the texture was the only difference for me. The Whopper I had was pretty terrible, though, very dry. I think they forgot the condiments or something. I'm not vegetarian, but I could understand how both could satisfy a craving if I were to be one. On a non-vegetarian side note, the BK taco is rated better for me than the Jack in the Box ones, because the deep fried shell is a little less greasy, and the fillings are basically identical. Just having some fun trying some of the things you've reviewed. So that's from Joanne in San Diego. Yeah, interesting that you tried out two of the plant-based ones. You know, I only tried out the Burger King one, and again, you know, I'm not a... People can eat whatever they would like to, and if someone would like to be a vegetarian or vegan, or that's all good. You know, it is interesting, but it makes a lot of sense to me how the plant-based burgers, you know, yeah, there is a hierarchy. I'm certain of that.
Yeah, I mean, no.
It's interesting texturally how it is different. I mean, that's the one thing I remember with the Burger King one. It was, I mean, not that I've had any others, but, you know, it was firm. That's a good way to describe it. So thank you for your email, and I'm glad you like the Burger King tacos as well. Haley in Fort Worth, Texas says, my goal is to finish watching all of your podcasts so I can start watching the live streams on YouTube and be finally caught up on all your content. I was just listening to your show where you talked about food quality going down, and was listening to some of the viewers' horror stories at fast food chains, and thought I should share why I refuse to eat KFC. I get this podcast is from last year, and it probably won't make the show. No, it's making the show, no worries. But I felt like the king of fast food reviews should hear about this atrocity. So growing up, KFC was one of my favorite places to eat, and as a toddler I would apparently throw fits if we went in and I didn't get the potato wedges, as it was absolutely my favorite. For some reason, as I got older, we just quit going as much, until it was a couple of years had gone by that I hadn't eaten there. So one day in 2018, my grandpa had gotten some chicken and potato wedges at KFC, and brought them home to us. Now, he complained about a long wait, bad service, and a gross-looking lobby. When we opened the box of chicken, I was shocked. You could see the feathers in the breading of the chicken. When we broke it open, you could see it was very much raw inside, but somehow smelled like it was burnt. I assume this was because they had fried it in old oil, but this goes without saying. We threw out all the food, vowed never to eat at KFC again.
How did you
That
make that
specific
circle
store
out
ended
of
up
it? That's
shutting
what I'm trying
down
to figure out.
because it failed in multiple health inspections, and I can see why. Thanks for keeping the show going. Excited for this week's show. So that was from Haley in Fort Worth, Texas. Wow, that sounds disgusting. And yeah, you did. I mean, you absolutely did the right thing. Yeah, don't eat that at all. I mean, it'll make you sick. It'll. Ugh. Yeah, I'm glad that you guys just didn't, and I'm glad the place got shut down, to be honest, because places like that, if there's just too many health violations, you know, they gotta do what they gotta do. And it's a safety hazard, it's a safety risk. I'm sorry you had to go through that, and I just imagine it was such a disappointing experience. You know, you go to this place, it was really good when you were young, and it's just, it's awful. So, I'm so sorry you had to go through that awful experience. And with that, I conclude today's broadcast of VORW. Thank you for listening and take care. This is VORW.
When reality stars get together.
I see you brought your own guzzler.
This is the voice of the report of the week. Signing on.
I don't know how they made
Hello,
that.
ladies and gentlemen, everyone listening. This
It's
is
hard to make a circle in
VORW
paint mode. It's hard to do
International,
anything in
the
paint
voice
mode,
of the
really.
report of the week. Very happy Thanksgiving to anyone and everyone who's tuned in right now. This Thursday, the 28th of November 2019, the year being. Welcome to the newest edition of VORW International, the voice of the report of the week. Someone was asking, they sent in an email, they said, what does VORW stand for? That's exactly what it stands for. It's an abbreviation for Voice of the Report of the Week. VORW, Voice of Report of the Week. So, there you have it. That's the secret behind the name. It's just a nice little abbreviation, 4 letters versus the whole deal. So it's just a little easier to remember, even if it's not a real word. It's just that. That's why the name is what it is, and it's stuck. So that's I have no problem with it either. But that's the story behind the name. Well, welcome to the Thanksgiving edition, the big Thanksgiving blowout of a show right here, and welcome one and all. Freeform talk program, another miscellaneous one. People have really been enjoying the freeform shows. I'm happy to go for it, so we're just going to do another one. Starting things off, since it is indeed a very festive occasion, how about we get some thoughts on Thanksgiving? So let's just go right into things. And a very happy Thanksgiving to everyone who is checking in right now, to everyone who's tuning in. A happy Thanksgiving Day. Thanksgiving 2019. The big thanks of giving, Thanksgiving Day. And here we are, though, still doing a show, still recording, broadcasting, getting it out the 28th of November 2019. One of the later Thanksgivings, I'm pretty sure. You know, very close to December. Time is just going by, but I'm past that point where it's even worth worrying about anymore. You know, it is what it is. Time will just do its thing, and that's it. Yeah, December, but I figure, hey, the good news is that if it's going so fast, then I'll be able to enjoy a little bit of the winter, but then before you know it, it'll be spring, and the weather will be a little warmer once again, which I prefer the warmer weather. I know everyone's different. That's completely understandable. We all have our preferences, what we like, what we don't like, what we're most comfortable with. Now the Thanksgiving show. I'm not really... Thanksgiving is one of those days that let's just put it this way. Even as of a few days ago, I forgot that Thanksgiving was this Thursday. So that's kind of my that tells you how much I'm really
We
going to
got
be doing
80%
for
agreement.
Thanksgiving right there. If I forgot that it even happened. But either way, I'm just going to take things a little easy today. Do a little more of a laid-back program because I know not a lot of people are going to listen, and that's fine. And I'm just going to monologue for a while, just going to talk about some various things, and then we'll open up the metaphorical mailbag once again, and we'll go from there, and we'll see what we have, what we don't have, what's there at all, and then we'll wrap things up. But either way, look, I hope you're having a good Thanksgiving if you tuned in. If you tuned in after the fact, then I hope your Thanksgiving celebrations were good. I hope it wasn't too crazy. I hope it was enjoyable. I hope the food was satisfactory. I hope that all expectations were either met or exceeded, and there was no undue stress or any of that. I hope it was just a nice day, a nice, pleasant holiday, or maybe you can catch up with some family or some friends and take a few moments to reflect on the things that you're thankful for as well. That's what it's all about. Either way, though, last year, we'll talk about Thanksgiving for a while. Why not? Yeah, Thanksgiving Day. Even though I don't do all that much for it, I know that it's a big deal for a lot of people. And of course, while you have the stress and the strain and all that, which when my family used to do the stuff for Thanksgiving, right now we don't. I mean, my whole family, we're just kind of right. It's Thanksgiving just is what it is. It's just another day, because those feelings that that it's all about can be harbored any day. Doesn't need to be on a special day, but again, everyone's circumstance is different, and for many it's just a good opportunity to see relatives, meet with family, friends, see people who you haven't seen in a while, right? Nothing wrong with that. Do some Thanksgiving traveling, etc. So everyone's different, and I get that. But yeah, when it comes down to Thanksgiving, for me, it was a very stressful day. And the thing that I always ended up being most thankful for was the fact that at the end of the day, I can say I'm so thankful that at least I've got another year till this happens again. Because it was a very, very stressful day. For me, anyway. But nowadays, I mean, with that not going on anymore, I can reflect on the things that I'm truly thankful for. And, very thankful for my loved ones. Very thankful.
About that.
With a good heart, a good mind, who want to do the right thing, who want to make this world a better place.
I don't know why I'm getting sick. I've been drinking water. I ain't nothing but water.
Such people, such mindsets even still exist.
They gotta be more healthy.
I'm really thankful for that. Of course,
It's time to be the last.
I'm thankful for the fact that with my accident earlier in the month, that it wasn't any worse. That despite whatever's going on now, the fact that I didn't die, that I didn't get any severe brain damage, any paralysis, any significant, broken bones, you name it. I'm really, really thankful that things just ended up as they did. And for many other things, you know, but one thing that I always recommend on Thanksgiving, regardless of whatever it is that you're doing and how crazy a day it might be, is to just take a minute in private reflection and just think about the things that you are thankful for. You know, whatever it is that you've been thinking about lately.
I don't know how they did this. I really do not know.
Keeps you from completely, perhaps, dwelling on the dark side. You know, that keeps you going.
Thought it was gonna be some special thing that curves.
Just think about those things, and it doesn't even need to be on Thanksgiving. Any day, really. You know, just take a few minutes and in just reflective meditation and just think about the things that you're thankful for.
How do you get that curve? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
I think it's a good thing to do every now and then, not just on Thanksgiving. Because I think in the grand scheme of things, it puts everything in perspective. So, that's all that I ask. Otherwise, have a good holiday. And, yeah. Thanksgiving dinner. Of course, aside from, you know, catching up with family or friends or any of that, of course, the biggest highlight of Thanksgiving for many is the Thanksgiving feast, the Thanksgiving dinner. Turkey dinner, or poultry substitute, and the big meal. We always used to prepare a great big turkey. And, you know, it's one of those things, it was a process, because I'm not, as it is, I'm not the biggest turkey eater. Like, I can't even name another day in the year where I would go and eat, like, turkey, you know, as you do on Thanksgiving, right? You can have a turkey sandwich, like a turkey BLT. That's what I would go with sometimes. But those are always like the deli meat cuts of turkey. But on Thanksgiving you have, you know, these great big slices of it, and all the other parts of the bird if you wish, and the way it's prepared and whatnot. I've never really had it like that any other day than Thanksgiving, and that's the one thing I remember with Thanksgiving would always make me realize how dry a bird turkey really is. It's like the meat. It can still be juicy, but you know, it has like this dry characteristic to it. But it would still get your appetite going, don't get me wrong. When you would start preparing this thing, and you have to cook it in the oven for like 8 hours, it's just this extraordinary period of time. It's a process, but you know, you're watching it cook, you're putting the herbs and the seasonings on it, and whatever it is, and the stuffing and so on. Even if the meat isn't something I'm usually a fan of, and it's not something I would normally eat, by the end of the day, you're looking forward to it. You are. You know, otherwise, I'll still get turkey, I'll still eat turkey, but again, just not in the way that I would on Thanksgiving. You know, I mean, the other week I went over to Panera Bread, and I got the turkey sandwich from there, but again, those are like the deli meat cuts of turkey. I remember on the Amtrak train,
I think this is what they did, they basically just stamped it all around.
I used to ride that in and around the Northeast, they, on their cafe car, it wasn't the dining car, it was just the cafe car, they had like this turkey, I think it was a turkey BLT.
They really need a new brush.
And it was
That's
like,
what they need.
Okay,
they need a straight line brush where you don't have to.
In that case, turkey doesn't bother me, but it's just otherwise, if it's not Thanksgiving, I'm just not going to go out and eat these great big slices of turkey for any other reason, really. And one other tradition that has since passed, it used to be on Christmas I would eat the goose. And I was going back, of course, a long ways, but the thing with goose was that it was a very, very fatty bird. I would always, it would just be a little too much for me. Kind of reminds me of how I would feel after I would go to Long John Silver's it's too fatty a meal. Even for all the stuff that I put in my body, sometimes you still just reach that peak. It's just too much. I've gotten those feelings before, so. No, goose is just a little too much for me, but turkey is okay, just every now and then, when it's not on the sandwich, when you're kind of eating it by itself, but I mean, the one thing that was always my favorite on Thanksgiving, it was never even the turkey. You know, that's the centerpiece. The turkey is the thing that everyone eyes up. The other day I was watching Trump do the presidential pardon of the turkeys, you know, that silly tradition, but it's a nice little break from things anyway. It's a little more on the wholesome side. I always watch the presidential pardon of the turkeys every year. Just I do. It's something to do, something to watch. But obviously the turkey is the focal point. That's the thing that's outlined, that's highlighted as being the signature star of every Thanksgiving feast. But I think my favorite, and I think many others can perhaps say the same, it wasn't the turkey, but it was the stuffing. Yeah, the stuffing. That was always my favorite part. And it was always the stuffing that was inside the turkey, too. That was always the best. But now they say don't do it anymore. They say don't, you know, you can get sick from that. And that was the best part, too. That's the one, oh man, that stuffing was the best. Easily. You know, without question. So now they say not to do that anymore, right, because they say the stuffing is porous and that it can kind of soak up the raw juices and make you sick, but I don't know, I remember I always used to have a pretty good track record not getting sick from that, but I guess it's like the same type of deal, you know, like with cookie dough. Man, that cookie dough I used to love, you know. I wouldn't eat much, just a tiny little piece, you know. I was a little tiny morsel of it. And the raw cookie dough, it always did taste good. It was a forbidden snack. Not as bad as what some people say, but always tasted good too. But then, of course, they always have the concerns with salmonella, saying don't do it. Right, don't do it if you value your life. If you at least don't want to be in a world of misery for a little while, don't snack on it. So, it is what it is, but I always used to enjoy the flavor of that. Just a tiny bit. In moderation, it was always good. I guess they say not to eat the stuffing that's in the turkey anymore, but that was the best thing about Thanksgiving. I remain steadfast that the stuffing inside of the turkey was the best part. I mean, that had the most flavor. It was always the best. So I mean, we'll keep the discussion about Thanksgiving dinner going for a little bit, but just a question for anyone who's listening today. Write in vorwinfo@gmail.com. For Thanksgiving dinner, what was your favorite component of it? What was your favorite part? And if you want, what was your least favorite too? So like, do you like the turkey? Is that your favorite? Do you like the stuffing? Do you like the little dinner rolls? You know, are you a bigger fan of the mashed potatoes, or do you like the cranberry sauce? Or, you know, do you go an unconventional route and do you just get Chinese takeout for Thanksgiving dinner? And, you know, do you like that the best? I mean, on a Thanksgiving dinner, what's your favorite part of it? What it could be conventional, could be unconventional. It's totally fine. What's your favorite? Then what's your least favorite? Also, just a Thanksgiving themed question. Why the heck not? Let's send the show into the holiday spirit. And yeah, what's your favorite part of the Thanksgiving dinner? What is it? Let me know. It's a simple question, and it could require a simple or complex answer. However you want to answer it, just talk if you want. Anything. Love to hear from someone. vorwinfo@gmail.com. That's vorwinfo@gmail.com. But I think I've said many a time that I enjoy the stuffing that's in the turkey. The least favorite part of the Thanksgiving dinner, in the traditional sense, is the cranberry sauce. I was watching the news. I think it was called World News Tonight on ABC, because I found this news program that at least they're on all night, and they give some news, and I like watching that at 3 a.m. And they had a segment. They were saying that the vast majority of people don't like the cranberry sauce, and I find myself, I'm part of that camp also. I don't like the cranberry sauce. I don't know what it is. It's just, it's got like that overwhelming, I guess, tart nature to it that's just a little too much. And I'm not a fan of it. So, yeah, the cranberry sauce is definitely my least favorite. Yeah, that's the one thing that I would always bypass. I would always get a little bit on my plate just to make it look like I was interested in it. Avoid any weird looks, and just, you know, fake it till you make it. But the cranberry sauce was never the highlight. But obviously every meal, you know, is prepared differently, has its individual touches and characteristics, and, you know, bits of personal flair here and there, so I think as a result the flavors can be different. And we have our favorites, we have our least favorites, but I'd be interested in knowing yours. Once again, VORWINFO@gmail.com. Last year, I vehemently opposed Thanksgiving, to the point where some people, and I understand, I get it, were at their wits' end, and they said, you know, can you just, some people were fuming. They said, you know, you're killing the holiday spirit, you're ruining it, and you're just a terrible, I remember they said, a terrible show. They were angry. But granted, I think I was a little harsh on the holidays. I think I was a little bit harsh on you know, how I feel about it.
Tentacle snap.
Because while you can be opinionated, anyway, this is my personal belief, this is my, you know, my personal ideology. While you can be opinionated about something, and, you know, you feel this way or that way about something, just because someone feels differently, right, or does something differently,
this will make your throat snap to the place you start painting, but then not attempt to snap to any other surface.
That they're really doing some irreparable
again, if you need
they're doing something
to snap
so ghastly,
to begin your throat, but don't want to be
like
snapping to everything around you after you started this. Like surface map, surface map. This also means you can snap the other stroke, not just structures, just for plants, fingers, ribbons, and all that sort of thing.
That's the one thing. I have my viewpoint on it, right, where it's just sometimes the stress, because we feel like we're forced to do this or that on a specific day, takes away from the true intended meaning and the feelings that I think should really be expressed on such a day. It takes away from that, diminishes that, and just makes it into a mess many a time. Not always, but I just feel like this sense of obligation that it has to be this way, and you have to do this, and you have to do that. And it has to be this, that, and the other thing, or else, you know, whatever. Hell is just going to open up, and it's going to be misery, and, right, I just don't, I disagree with that. But, you know, this year, the difference is that while I still have those same exact feelings as I did in previous years, at this point I just shrug, and I'm just like, look, I don't care anymore. I don't care what anyone else does, you know. Let it all go downhill. What does it matter anymore? It doesn't. Sitting here and complaining about it, it's not gonna do anyone any good. So why bother? It doesn't. What does it matter? Let people do whatever they want. If they're not hurting others, they're not harming others. Doesn't matter. I'm not gonna waste the time. So, yeah, it is what it is. I don't know. It just doesn't. Do whatever you want. And celebrate Thanksgiving however you want to celebrate it. Whatever you want to do. If you don't want to be thankful for a thing, that's on you. I think we all should be, but I'm not going to sit here and try and verbally force your hand anymore and, you know, try to say, do this and don't do that and think this and think that. No, we're done with that. You do you, but at least in the back of your mind, try to be the best you can be. And that's as far as I'm gonna go nowadays. It's just, you know what you've got to do. Because, I mean, that ideology came about, and it's not a positive outlook necessarily, but sometimes it's just hard to see it any other way. Where it's just, I remember, for a long time, I would try to give these lectures, not commanding, but trying to expose different viewpoints and, you know, get people to at least consider certain things. And I still do that to this day. It's just that I try not to be as forceful. I try not to say, like with Thanksgiving, that, you know, like I was saying last year, the way that it's done in society, I think, is all wrong. And that, you know, you can still celebrate it, but you should feel thankful and enjoy the company of others and whatnot. Right? It's like, that's the same message that I have this year, but it's very in your face when I say it the other way. It's trying to say, I think you should take your time, that you have the power to do with as you please, and do this with it, instead of that. Why? Because I think it's so. That's a really selfish thing to say. So, I still have my views, I still have my opinions, but you realize, you try to do this one thing, this one way, but it doesn't really, you have to look at it from a different angle sometimes. Anyways, maybe that's not the best way to go about doing things, or maybe it just doesn't work out that way. Like, I mean, I feel, this is a feeling that I've had for a while, and it's one that I've tried to fight. Because it's not a good one, and you try not to legitimize it, you try not to even give it credibility, but when it doesn't go away and you keep noticing it, something's up. Where, I mean, I don't know, I just have this feeling deep down, like everything's just, like I'm watching the decline in real time. It's a surreal thing. But it feels like I'm watching a decline in just quality, respect, maturity, civility, dignity, kindness. I feel like it's fleeting. Everything is. And it's hard to see it any other way. I try to tell myself that might not be the case. But then I even just go outside for even a few minutes, and then something happens. It's just hard not to. You ever get that, where you have a feeling about something, and you're trying to say, well, I don't know, maybe it's just, it's like it's a gut feeling, but I try to dismiss it, because maybe it's just something that I'm feeling, you know? Just because you're feeling something doesn't always mean that it's correct. It doesn't mean that it's true or right or wrong. But sometimes we just feel things, but it's not really the case. So, I'm trying to tell myself that this isn't how it is. But this feeling, and it's not a sense of urgency, mind you, it's, look, this feeling, it's like it's past that point. It's the point of no return. We're past it. And now I'm just sitting here watching the process. It's like a ship that's sinking, and it's past that point where it could be bailed out, where the water can be taken out, that it can be fixed and patched up and set on its course. You know what's what's going to happen. It's going to go under, and there's nothing more that you can do. And it's like you could either A, get off the ship, or B, go down with it. And when it comes down to society, there's no way to get off that ship unless A, you isolate yourself completely, or B, you no longer exist. Either of those things I don't advise one single bit. So then the only other thing you're given is to just watch it go down. But I don't know. I try to keep dismissing that feeling, but it's a tough one to dismiss when, again, you see it over and over and over again. I shrug my shoulders, nothing I can do about it, but I think what those feelings have kind of led to is just this viewpoint where it's like, look, it is what it is, and I realize now that there are lots of people who they're just going to do whatever it is that they do, and nothing is going to ever change that. No impassioned lecture, no talk, nothing will. And the people who are willing to lend an ear, they're the good people. They already are listening, so it's like you see the divide between, it's one of two things. You have the people who have the good in them still, and kind of have already changed, or improved, or at least have that spark to try to be a better person. They have that in them. Or you have the people, group B, who will never get that at all. And it's always going to be blocked out. It's going to be ineffectual. So at that point, you just kind of say to yourself, then what does it matter anymore? Because while there are good people out there, we know that there are also forces that can't be changed. At least that any other person really can't change something. It has to come from within. And sometimes that will never materialize. So, just a meandering philosophical lecture, but those are just some trains of thoughts that I've had. Not positive, but I wouldn't even say this is negative either. It's not even, it's just there. But sometimes that's how I've been feeling about the world lately, that, again, it's not about watching the world burn, it's just that, can anything really be salvaged anymore? Maybe it can. But just sometimes, I try to look at things with those hopeful attitudes, but then just on a day-to-day basis, it gets proven otherwise, so it seems. And it's not like you're just looking at the news or looking at social media, right, and you're seeing these cherry-picked examples of one of these negative things or another, because that's another thing, right? You look at certain media outlets, certain social media outlets, the worst naturally gets highlighted out and put on the pedestal for the sake of the viewership and entertainment. That's how it's always been. That's why you don't see too many positive stories on the news anymore, because the negative stuff is what people want to see, they want to hear. What gets those views, listens, clicks, etc. Audience size on the increase. So we know that stuff is already, it's cherry-picked, but it's one thing if, like, that's all that you see and you never see the world for yourself, you never see it with your own two eyes, right? That's your reality. then absolutely it's very valid to say that how do you know that this is how the world really is when you've never even been exposed to it? Have you ever even seen these things, ever felt these things, ever experienced these things in person? Or is everything really fine on the outside and this is just a fake reality, a bubble that you put yourself in? You give the illusion that this is the way that it is, right? That's one thing. It's another if you even just go outside and then this happens to you. You see it, you bear witness to it with your own two eyes, in the flesh, in person. Then you can see it on the news, online, on social media, all you want. But when it crosses that boundary from being something that's just in the online world to being in the real world that impacts you directly, then it shows you how far gone, how widespread, and how real it really is. That it's not fear-mongering, that maybe it's just the way that it is. But that stuff can really jade you. It most certainly can. And it can turn the most optimistic individual into a huge pessimist. And again, sometimes those things, they breed pessimistic thoughts. When all you see is seemingly negativity, and you go out with a hopeful attitude, and every last time all you see is the worst in people, then how do those thoughts not carry over to your overall outlook at society, and start seeing it in a more negative light? I try to balance out my outlook by saying, look, there's both good and bad in the world. There's a lot more bad than I initially thought. But there's still good too. There's still a lot of good people, good things, good places. That it's not all evil, that it's not all gone. So as a result, that's what I tell myself to counter those kind of pessimistic viewpoints that, you know, maybe it's just best to just sit back and watch the world burn. Because it's not all evil, it's not all bad, it's not all worth throwing away, throwing in the towel for. There's still good and things can still be changed for the better. Is it ever going to matter in the long run? We don't know. We have no clue. We don't know anything. But that's no reason to give up. So that's what I'll tell myself sometimes when I look at the world and I kind of see it with this just darkened shroud over it, and it just gets reaffirmed. I just gotta tell myself, yeah, but it's not all that way. Maybe it is getting worse, maybe it's not. See, I always keep that door open too. Because we just don't know. One behavior that I've seen more and more is, like, it seems to me that an increasing number of people, it's like, I think this is how we've always been, but again, this is something that I've noticed, enjoy intentionally going out of their way to inflict some sort of inconvenience upon others. For no reason whatsoever. I see this happen every single day. It happens to me all the time. Where it's like, I'm just going outside, and all of a sudden someone just does something. It's like, I know they do this on purpose, to mess with you. It's like they do something intentionally to cause you an inconvenience. It's like, this is maybe a characteristic that a lot of people have. I don't know. I've never been that way. I'll never go out and say, I want to go F with this person just because. I want to go and mess with them. Even though I know nothing about them, have no clue who they are, I'm just going to go do it anyway. I've never felt that way, but I just don't know what breeds those feelings inside so many people, because I see it a lot. And I'm sure there's some cases where it's like, it'll be something that'll mess with you, but it's as done accidentally. That's one thing. I understand that. I know I've been guilty of that myself. I'm just not paying attention, and I never mean any of the effects that would come about that. But then there's other individuals where you know if it's either repetitive or it's just something that to the extent that you know they're paying attention and that they're doing it on purpose. What breeds those feelings, those actions, I have no clue. No idea. I wish I could say I knew, but I don't. So a few miscellaneous thoughts. Let's adjust the microphone here. It's better. A few miscellaneous thoughts on Thanksgiving and really just the state.
Sweet Tart says, why choose?
Be Grace and Grace.
Be sweet and tart.
Sweet Tarts.
Be both.
Be both. これが貴様の墓標だ.
Excessive underarm sweating holding you back? Qbrexza is the first and only once daily prescription cloth towelette approved to treat excessive underarm sweating, also known as axillary hyperhidrosis. Open one today and see what unfolds.
Do not use Qbrexza if you have certain medical conditions. Qbrexza may cause new or worsening urinary retention, problems with control of your body temperature, and blurred vision. The most common side effect reported was dry mouth. Call your healthcare provider if you experience side effects.
Imagine how life can unfold. Ask a dermatologist how you may reduce excessive underarm sweating with Qbrexza.
State of things, overall. You can't shake that feeling. Sometimes you just sense it, and then you see things that affirm this. It's hard to not see it any other way. But things just are how they are, but sometimes it just... yeah, I guess, look, the situation, things just are how they are. What can I do about it? So, there we have it. You're listening in to VORW International, the voice of the report of the week. Your questions, your comments, your feedback, and your reception reports, all of them are welcome. VORWINFO@gmail.com. That's VORWINFO@gmail.com. Talk about anything that you want. If you want to talk about the state of things today, go right ahead. If you want to go ahead and talk about the Thanksgiving dinner, as I did ask that question, go ahead there. And if you just have any miscellaneous feedback for future shows, if you have any interesting conspiracy theories you want to share with me, I'm always interested in those. I've been doing some research with that stuff lately too. But if you have anything you want to share, anything at all, by all means, go ahead. On a little brief update on things, I recently went ahead and did a listener survey, and it was all good for the most part. I sent it out on the social media. It's a listener survey in regards to the podcast and then the music show as well. And I had some questions. It was like, do you listen regularly? Which show is your favorite? By what means do you listen? And then I also leave some room for just some open-ended correspondence as well. But, so far so good. About a couple thousand responses, which is great. And of course now comes the task of sorting through all the correspondence, because there's a way you can see the summary of it. So you can say, let's say 75% of respondents said this, and so on and so forth. But sometimes I like seeing the individual responses themselves, so you can kind of tie certain comments to certain listening habits, etc. So I just like going through them one by one, but just see what's going on, touch base with the listening audience, and just understand how things are, the state of things with this show. So always enjoyable to do. If you do want a copy of the survey, it's anonymous completely. I'm not collecting your data. I don't want your information. I don't want any names, any email addresses. I don't want any of that. I don't even ask where anyone is from. Only thing I ask is what age range you fit into, and you could even just say, I don't want to answer that. That's completely fine. So I don't want your personal info. I'm not out to do that. I don't believe in that stuff. So it's completely anonymous. And if you want it, though, I will provide a link to it in the description, in the comments, and if you're okay with sending in an email, I can personally send it to you. You can send an email to vorwinfo@gmail.com. Again, just an anonymous survey, very, very short. It can be over in 30 seconds, or you can take some more time with it, but just getting the basics down. But those surveys, again, very, very useful. Last one I did was in April, so I said, well, I think it's time to make the rounds again and send out a new one. So we got that done, and and that'll be good. That'll work out nicely. Also, on another note, just on a, I haven't talked about it in a while. If you're ever interested in advertising on the show, it's always welcome, always open. You could advertise anything you want at this point. It doesn't matter anymore. Anything you want. Anything at all. No restrictions anymore, so if there's anything you want to advertise your music, your YouTube channel, if you have a product, a service, if you're selling men's
I don't get it. You group it and then still
supplements,
it's not fucking with you. It's pissing me off.
Shortwave radios or dinner plates.
And you guys pissing me off.
Used cars or anything in between. It doesn't matter. Send in an email if you want to get the word out about your product, your service, or your social media presence. I'll be happy to work with you. vorwinfo@gmail.com. Advertise anything. It's open. I've lowered the price even more, so I think it's going to be some really prime, optimal airtime that's opening up for you. Something you're interested in anyway. Consider it a holiday discount. Best you're ever going to get. And of course, if you'd want to support this show via more conventional means, go right ahead. Please consider a donation via PayPal to vorwinfo@gmail.com, or via Patreon at patreon.com/thereportoftheweek. So with that, we will go over to the open lines mailbag part of the show, and let's just see. Usually I'll try to be a little more organized than I am right now. Usually I'll try to go ahead and, I'll outline the emails that I want to talk about, but I have not done that, so we're just going to literally open up the inbox and just let's go through it. Let's see what it is that we have, and we'll just go from there. So, of course, we do have some thoughts on COPPA. Right there, the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. And you know what? If you made it through this far, I think I'll give you my completely unfiltered thoughts on it. We know that it's by the television industry, right? That's what it's about. It's about killing YouTube. Because you look at some, videos that get so many millions of views.
I just been going down.
You compare that to a high-budget television production that only gets a fraction of that. You better believe the TV industry, number one, it's been in decline for a while.
Woo!
YouTube has been a major contributor in that. The industry is really, really pissed off right now. And they're getting desperate. They're getting angry. And it's showing right now. They've got the federal government with them. And this is what they're doing. They're going to try and just suppress it, shut it down, and take everyone down with them, myself included. Don't be surprised if things get really, really crazy starting in 2020. And you know what? Hey, guess what? Someone on the listenership survey said that they're 12 years old, so guess what? Can't have this show on YouTube anymore because it's obviously made for kids, because one single kid listened in, right? That's the way that it goes now. That's the new normal. I don't know if it'll get that crazy, but the ambiguity of it should send the chills down anyone's spine. The fact that they're kind of saying, well, we'll take a look and we'll fine you if we want to. Really just comes down to how I think, what I think it is. Scary though, very, very scary. Only thing I can see changing one day is if the advertisers ever realize they're not, once all the channels that they used to advertise on get either taken down or put in the restricted area, and no one can ever see them again, and they're losing revenue, so they move back to TV, and they're not making the kind of profit that they did on YouTube, maybe then the legislation will change, because that's the only thing that seems to never get anything done anymore, is, you know, those who have money, that's it. The big corporations. But anyone else can get stepped on and squashed, and everyone will just look the other way and not do anything. But that's what it is. Look, it's never been about the kids. And it's disappointing. It makes me sad because the kids should be protected. So many terrible things going on, but you know it. We see it. And look, just brace yourself. That's all that I can say. Get ready. It's going to be very, very interesting when New Year's rolls around. But either way, I'm saying, look, this show isn't for kids. If you're a kid, you know, for the sake of things, this isn't meant for you. I know that's kind of rude to say, but, you know, what else can I do? Same thing with food reviews. It's not meant for kids. Was never meant for kids. This show
I told him not to follow me, and guess what he's doing? Following me.
Be marked. It's not meant for kids, and hopefully they're not going to go after and find me, but we'll just see what happens. But either way, I digress. It's still just, it's disgusting. That's all that there is. It's disgusting. It's the FTC. It's not YouTube doing this. That's, you know, their hand is being forced in this case. Anyway, email is open, like I said, vorwinfo@gmail.com. And we have a few pieces of feedback. Let's just get to whatever we can. There was a good email that came in from a listener who would prefer to remain anonymous and just not have the email read in exact words. But it just essentially says, very qualified and knowledgeable in regards to the COPPA legislation. Worked with various think tanks and groups in DC, and it's a terrible, terrible idea. Very poorly implemented, infringes your rights, could be very draconian, and it's very clear that the people have no clue what really goes on behind closed doors and don't know what the government's really up to. It was a very good email, but I respect, of course, our listeners' privacy, and it's just really scary when you really see what's going on. Ernest has a few thoughts on COPPA as well. He says, I hate it. It was the straw that broke the camel's back for me when it came to making videos for YouTube. When I found out about COPPA, I spent that night cursing YouTube and the federal government. Once I was done, I terminated my gaming channel. I wouldn't categorize my stuff that child-friendly, but much of the content on that channel was game reviews. I thought I was just overreacting at first, but I later found out I saved my own behind. If I kept my channel up and continued to upload, I know for certain I was not going to make my channel child-friendly, and under COPPA they deem video games kid-friendly. Now, they didn't specify the type of video games, which I can say as a 28-year-old male, I only played and reviewed games that were mature, but look, that doesn't matter under COPPA. I decided that doing YouTube as a creator just wasn't worth it anymore. I already stopped receiving ad revenue because of the adpocalypse, and then this happened. I figured it's obvious. It's just not an avenue for creators like myself, that I should just use it as a viewer. I'm not trying to get fined 42K that I don't have, just because I didn't label my channel child-friendly, and a video game review of mine had gameplay in it. Hope it makes it your way, and again, I enjoy the podcast especially. Hope your holidays and New Year are fantastic. So thank you so much, Ernest. I'm really sorry that this happened to you. I mean, it's just... it's things like these that make my blood boil. You know I'm strongly against it. You know that. I'm all about... You should be able to have your privacy, your rights, but saying that this is the answer to it is just utterly ridiculous. And I'm sorry that it had to end this way. When you start a YouTube channel, I think a lot of people, at least, they try to have high hopes for it. They want to make something out of it. I advocate that. I say, it doesn't even need to be a big audience, but the fact that it's getting out to someone is a wonderful thing. And, not even to be discouraged by the small numbers. But then when the federal government comes in and literally takes it from you, I understand your frustration. You're like, what's the point anymore? I don't have this money. If they fine me like this, what can I do? I'm sorry that you had to just shut it down like that, but, I mean, again, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what's gonna happen when New Year rolls around. And what are they gonna do? Are they just gonna start killing everything off left and right? Or is it gonna be a much more slower approach? Is it just gonna be here and there? Is it just gonna be ineffectual and nothing's gonna change? We don't know. But again, we gotta keep our eyes on this, because YouTube is big. YouTube is far bigger than the television industry ever will be. Once again, YouTube is the new TV. But obviously, we'll just see what happens. So thank you again very much for your correspondence. Going over to Valerie, she says, have you watched Twin Peaks? Could you say something about it on your next podcast? No, I've never watched Twin Peaks. I know they always compare me to the one character on Twin Peaks. I really gotta watch it, though. I really got to. They always say I look like Agent. Dale Cooper, which I'm looking at that right now. I can see why. I don't think I look like him. He's got good facial structure, but hair is he's kind of going more, not like a pompadour, but he's got more volume in his hair, right? Like just more flat down. I just like it out of the way. But I've heard a lot of good things about Twin Peaks, and I'll have to watch it. I'll have to watch it at some point. I think it's on Netflix, so I'll be able to check that out if I wanted to. Alex in Philadelphia says, I listen to your show all the time, and just really enjoys all the feedback, too. But he wants to get into shortwave, which, again, I recommend. You see what's going on with the internet, and it's just a good, handy medium to have, at least on hand as a backup, if nothing else. But anyway, he says, after the latest episode, I'm just have a few questions. I want to get a Texun PL380, but since I live in the city, I'm nervous that the reception won't be great. Should I get an additional shortwave antenna and set something up outside? Are there any programs you would recommend? So number one, the Texun, I believe it was a PL380 that you were interested in, is a really good radio, and it's a good one for starters. Everyone has their preferences, of course, but it really is a good starter radio. I've gotten so many people who have bought in that radio, have purchased it, really. And they've just always been satisfied with it. So number one, it's a good radio. Number two, I would recommend getting a shortwave antenna for it, because it has the the telescoping, the whip antenna, the built-in one, that will pick up the strong stations. But obviously, having one, and there's two on the Amazon page that work out, for me anyway, the Kato T1 radio antenna, or the Sangean, that's Sangean, ANT60 antenna. Either one of those, they're cheap, they're like 12, 13 bucks, but those will boost reception greatly. They do a good job. I use one of these wire antennas as well, and I mean, when you think of an antenna, right, you think of this big metal thing, etc. These do not look like that. It's just a tiny little black wire, and that's it. But it works. That's the antenna. And but the best way to use it is you either plug the one end of the antenna into a little jack on the side of the radio, or there's something you can attach to it. It works. There's a way to get it connected always. And then you just take this wire, and the best way to do is, number one, if there's a way you can get this wire outside, literally just put it outside. Extend it and put the wire outside, and that'll work. Otherwise, put it near your windows, and it will boost reception. I'm thankful enough to have a decent enough reception on the shortwave where I am, just with the radio itself. But even then, I have a wire antenna hooked up outside, so I feed it in through the window inside, so I can, don't have to go outside to listen to anything. But when I connect the wire antenna, then I'm able to get all the stations that I like listening to, right, with a better signal. I'm able to hear, though, some stations further away that just might not come in otherwise, even if reception is good. And it's really ideal for being able to hear some more far-away stations that can be cool to listen to. I mean, the other day, I was able to pick up the Voice of Nigeria in English on 11,770 kilohertz in the afternoon, and it was just coming in really, really strong. So, some English language broadcasts from Nigeria, which is just cool. It's a station I would never hear or listen to otherwise. I was able to listen to them. One evening, I was able to pick up all of these stations out of China, China National Radio, which are made for a domestic audience over there. But of course, with the distance, in some parts of the world, you hear it non-stop, because there's so many shortwave stations in China, because lots and lots of people still listen to the radio over there. But they were able to make it over here, and I was able to get some good reception all the way from China, which was nice. Radio New Zealand is a favorite. And of course, I enjoy listening to the domestic radio stations on shortwave. Two other stations that are good are, again, the domestic ones, WRMI, which has more like international broadcasters that buy airtime off of them. My show is on them. Some interesting programs there. And I also like WWCR. They have a good signal, and my show is also there. But they also air a lot of interesting, just alternative programs, conspiracy theory stuff, just, stuff that could be very interesting to listen to. Might not agree with all of it, but can make for some interesting shows either way. But both of those have a lot to offer, and mostly you just have to sift through things, sort through, and just see what calls out to you. Ethan in Connecticut, checking in. He said, I enjoyed the show, and the thoughts on Capo were interesting. In regards to your question, my favorite Star Wars movie would be either The Empire Strikes Back or Return of the Jedi. As a kid, it used to be Revenge of the Sith. because I thought the fight scene between Anakin and Obi-Wan at the end of the film was cool. But now looking at the movies with a more developed idea of what makes a good movie, my favorite is definitely one of the two aforementioned. While Empire is widely regarded as the best movie because of its compelling character arcs and much darker and more serious story compared to A New Hope, I always enjoyed Jedi just as much. In particular, I love the whole throne room scene between Vader, Luke, and Palpatine toward the end of the film. Though some have claimed the movie tried too hard to appeal to kids, the Ewoks being Exhibit A in that claim, I've always found the scenes of them to be endearing. So thank you, Ethan. I enjoy your feedback there. And yeah, Empire Strikes Back is definitely one of the more serious films, that's for sure. I understand what some people mean when they say, like, the Ewoks are trying to, appeal to kids. I guess that was child-directed right there. It was meant for kids. I had to. But, yeah, it's, I like them all. But I would probably say out of those two, Empire Strikes Back is probably my favorite. Now, Dano is checking in, and again, I respect all opinions, so let's go for it. Says, I think the COPPA legislation and settlement with YouTube and Google doesn't go far enough. The protection of personal privacy and the ability to not be bombarded with personalized advertisements should be given to everyone. Furthermore, it should not be legal to require access to a user's private data as the only means to access a website. The exchange is always unequal in that the value of the personal data is worth more than the content consumed by the customer. And data can be sold to an infinite number of buyers at varying prices, while the content will always be consumed just once by the consumer. There are several politicians pushing for data to be treated with property rights. Imagine if you compiled all the data that Facebook, Google, Amazon, Netflix, and Apple have on you, and calculated how much money they made selling ads directed specifically to you. Your data is making them rich, and you should have a cut of that, or at least be able to opt out of the process completely and simply pay for their services. That's from Dano. I appreciate your thoughts, Dano. Problem is that in my opinion anyway, the way that the system works, even if that was done, a cut of it would never be given back to you. They keep it all. Though I do agree with you, your data, your personal information, all of that is just such an important thing in my opinion, and I think so many of us, I know I have, we've just accepted things the way that they are. It's like the privacy doesn't exist anymore. That's all that there is. It doesn't. It should, and I was saying earlier in the show, you can do anything that you want. But you see, like the Amazon Alexa devices, I don't think I will ever have one of those. It scares me, quite frankly. I know that a lot of people like them and that they can be pretty popular, but it just scares me, the fact that now all of a sudden they're doing literally everything for us, and you're inviting it into your house. I don't know, just those types of devices has really unnerved me, and I'll be happy to walk the extra few steps and turn the lights on and off on my own and just Google something. Googling something is easy enough as it is. But now
they can carry this for fun, but they take a long time.
I don't know, I just have a lot of worry with those
I spent 2 days working on this game.
choices, but I don't have anything against you if you have one. That's your personal choice. You have free will, and exercise it as you wish. We have an anonymous listener also checking in. Said, can you provide a comment on the Green Children of Woolpit? Absolutely. That's a very interesting story right there. The Green Children of Woolpit. So it's a legend dealing, I guess it's actually going all the way back to the 12th century England, Woolpit in Suffolk, England. And apparently it's just the fact that these two children, brother and sister, appeared out of nowhere. I mean, granted, things were very rural back then, right? Not very developed, so there was a lot of open land, agrarian communities, and these two children, brother and sister, normal appearance except that their skin was green, and they spoke in an unknown language, and would only eat raw, broad beans, which are just, like little beans. So, of course, I mean, very, very odd. Right there, you have these two kids that are, obviously, who has green skin? No one. And they don't speak in any sort of known language. They only eat this certain thing. Eventually, they were accepted into the community, taken care of. They weren't just killed on the spot or anything. They learned to eat other food, and they lost their green skin color. But the boy, I guess maybe he just wasn't used to the food or whatever. Obviously, health conditions back then were not good either. Was sickly, and he died pretty quickly. But his sister, the girl, she did adjust to her new life, but was considered to be, quote, rather loose and wanton in her conduct, in quotes, so take that as you will. But after learning to speak English, she explained that her and her brother came from St. Martin's Land, a subterranean world inhabited by green people. Now, it's really interesting to think about.
Okay.
Whether it's real or not, or whatever that ended up being, I think it's fascinating to think about, and I always enjoy this so much, like the fact that this could have possibly happened, that there were multiple accounts of it, what really happened, where they really came from, if this did materialize. Just fascinating when you think about all the possibilities. Now, I don't think there is any sort of subterranean world, but that also leads me into the Hollow Earth theory, which I think is I say kind of sarcastically, far superior to Flat Earth, mind you, neither of which I prescribe to. I believe that the Earth is spherical, but Hollow Earth is that's another fascinating one, and you can kind of, if you ever want to, you can tie these two hand in hand, and you can say that if Hollow Earth does exist, and there is another world inside of Earth, and then they could have, of course, emerged from there. But if you ever want to read about Hollow Earth, yeah, you have to look up Richard Byrd, that's B-Y-R-D, very, very decorated individual, American naval officer, explorer, full-blown admiral. So obviously many would deem him as a pretty trustworthy source. Back in the 1920s, he claimed, as he was flying up to the North Pole, to have entered Hollow Earth, and flew around in this mysterious land, with different populations, that a lot of the Pleistocene megafauna, like the woolly mammoths, still existed, were still around. I say either way, it's fascinating reading material, but if that's something that you're interested in, one thing leads to another. Start off with the Green Children, read about that, and then just start looking up Hollow Earth, because I think compared to Flat Earth, which is just kind of saying, it's flat and that's it, Hollow Earth is far more interesting, right? The fact that that theory would propose that there's a world inside of this world, under our feet. There's potential that there might have been crossover and expeditions from one into the other. If you have nothing better to do and you want to kill some time, read about it, and it'll make for some entertainment. But that's a fascinating thing, and I always loved reading these old experiences, these old encounters back from those days. Just some fascinating things, I must say. This is the kind of stuff that captivates, you know? So if anyone has any other topics like that, feel free to just send them in, suggest them if you wish. One thing that always gets me is, I mean, when you talk about things inside the Earth, one thing I remember seeing in the news a while back, this is years ago, but still makes you think, I remember that they were saying that there might be massive subterranean oceans, you know, many miles below our feet. But it's possible that there might be more water than all of the oceans combined in the Earth itself. Again, it's these massive underwater oceans that are just too far down for us to reach with our current technology at this point, or if we just don't want to, it's not economically feasible, who's to say. But I don't know, maybe there is, to think that there might be these giant oceans, you know, I don't know if they would be sloshing around, but definitely down there. Just interesting to think about either way. Of course, you have the underground aquifers, but this would be different. This is, you know, again, there's the difference between the aquifers and something that's like the Pacific Ocean, right? Who's to say? Might have been disproven by now, but still interesting to think about anyway. An interesting concept. Howie is checking in, just says, how are you not fat? Seriously, how are you not fat? We see what you eat. Plus, it sounds like you go to Starbucks frequently. What gives? Are you some kind of Superman? Is that what it is? Well, here's the deal. Here's the answer to it. There's this one item from Steak and Shake, and it's a dreaded item, but it's one that's talked about from time to time, and people try to discourage you from getting it. And it's called the 7x7. There's a top bun. There's a bottom bun, 7 beef patties, lots of cheese, slice of cheese between each patty, you name it. And you know, the phrase is curiosity killed the cat. You're thinking about it, you research it, you know what it is, you know that it's there, you know that you can get it if you want, but should you, right? It's there, but should I? Nothing's stopping me. I have free will. I can pay for it. Maybe I'll do it. And it was that contemplation. Yet once the idea is there, the spark is lit. And it's only a matter of time. It's a powder keg ready to go off. You dismiss it for a little bit, but then it comes back. It's a recurrent, not intrusive, but it's just a recurrent thought. You dismiss it, you say, no, I don't want to. I don't know what's going to happen to me if I eat this. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't want to. I value my life too much. But then it comes back. Yeah, but it's there. 7x7. And eventually it fully ignites and you cave in. You give in, and before you know it, you're there. There's no turning back now. And when I went in and they asked me what I wanted, I remember the guy called over the manager because it was like he didn't want to complete this order. He didn't want to actually send this to the kitchen and give this to me. It was like he feared for my life too. They made me sign a little waiver. It was like, you know, whatever, if this gives me a heart attack, if I don't die or something, right, they're not responsible. This is my fault. I know what I'm getting myself into, and I am 100% responsible for this. And I guess I was supposed to be like, for people who might have had second thoughts on wanting to get this thing, right, they were trying to say, maybe this will discourage them, maybe this will make them turn back and realize what they might be doing to themselves. But because of what had happened before, because I'd been fighting those thoughts, but I was already past the point of no return. I was there. I was ready for this. Yeah, I wasn't really thinking straight. I just said, Forget about the consequences. I'm getting the 7x7 burger from Steak and Shake. So they brought out this towering thing. It was like in a pool of grease. I mean, you should have seen the thing. And I get it. I had to squash it down, right? Because of course there's no way I was going to be able to eat that thing in one bite with my jaw the way it is. I squashed it down, you know. I mean, that's what I was trying to do, like in the review for the KFC chicken and waffles. I was trying to squash it down a little bit so I could eat it in one bite. But granted, you know, for the review, you still gotta make it presentable, right? This time around, it was just for me. So, the fact of the matter is that it didn't matter what it ended up looking like. That thing was gonna be consumed by me no matter what. So I squashed it down, you know, first, like, with my hands, I pressed it down. I was getting the grease everywhere, but I said, you know, I can excuse myself to the bathroom if I want. It's no big deal. And now it's not like a pancake, but it's definitely more manageable. But I wanted to go further. And I got the knife and fork. I pressed down on it. I was smashing it in. Then from the other side, it's like a trash compactor, you know? And I was making it smaller and smaller and smaller. And I kept going. More and more, smaller and smaller. I wanted it to be nearly microscopic. And then something strange happened. You know, I was making it even smaller still. But all of the weight, all of the mass that was behind it, started having a very strange reaction. And what eventually happened was that it ended up being so small, but still containing so much mass, that it became a micro black hole. I ate it, and nothing's ever been the same since then, so there you go. Hope that answered your question, and on to the next we go. We've got one from Matthew, also related to shortwave, but this one will be an easy one. He just says, I've been a long-time listener, and I want to purchase a shortwave radio to make the switch, and I want to listen to shortwave and also to some local sports on the AM. And I don't know if I should get the Texun PL660 or the Texun PL880. Many people say that the speaker on the 880 is better, but the 660 picks up the signals better. Again, also, he asked if I would recommend buying an antenna, and yes indeed, but I suggest you just take a look at the ones I recommended earlier. Those apply to that as well. In regards to the radios, I would recommend the 660. I think it does do a good job picking up signals, and the speaker in it is not bad at all. It's never given me any problems, never given me any issues, and it's never caused me any trouble. It's a little cheaper than the 880, and it's just so durable too, so I would recommend the 660. I mean, 880 is a little bit of an improvement. It's nothing life-changing, nothing earth-shattering, but if you want to fork over some extra cash and get the 880, go for it. But I think the Texun PL660 will suffice. And of course, if anyone wants to get a shortwave radio, if you have any questions about it, send in an email to vorwinfo@gmail.com. Also, of course, any random feedback on the show, vorwinfo@gmail.com. So feel free to send it in, but I'll be happy to recommend you a radio, and of course, there might be some really good Black Friday deals coming up, so this might be the time. If you are considering getting a radio, you might get one at all-time low prices, so hey, it's something, if you're interested in it, check it out. Now, to finish off the show, we will go over to a few audio recordings. The first one is from Patrick, who says, I thought of a potential restructuring of the COPPA problem at hand. It's not perfect, but I think it's a better solution to what's currently in place. So this is from Patrick.
Hey, John. My name is Patrick, calling in from Toronto. I thought I'd toss a different approach to COPPA regulations your way. I believe you are rightfully upset. And it really makes no sense to me that content creators are punished for collecting data from children when they really don't get So perhaps YouTube should rethink everything and maybe place the regulations on the user side of things. And thus, my alternative solution. So let's say someone younger than 13 makes an account. They punch in their date of birth as part of the account creation process. YouTube should recognize that and make it so the user personally doesn't have access to the data collecting features mentioned in your past broadcast on any video on the entire platform. Of course, you could easily lie and provide a different birthday. I mean, I used to do that on age-restricted websites when I was young. But, this way, it's on the user and not the content creator. Perhaps if the user is caught, the parents or guardians could be fined. Maybe that seems kind of cruel. And I don't think the fine should be as deep as it is, of course. But this would force parents to have a more careful eye on what their children get up to online, which I do think is becoming increasingly more important. There are countless dangers online, and it's my belief that parents and guardians need to be keeping a more watchful eye on the youth's internet consumption, regardless of this type of stuff. I look forward to hearing your further thoughts on this matter. Have a good one.
So that was some interesting feedback from Patrick. Interesting how you propose, in regards to COPPA, that it, like you said, would go out perhaps and find the parents, which is interesting. I think one thing that you said that definitely, if that ever were implemented, that would ring true, is that it would definitely, once money gets involved, they would really start getting a more careful eye on how things are with their kids.
Hi, I just wanted to drop a quick note and opinion about your last week's podcast about COPPA, about some of the things you said and about how I viewed them a little differently. I think that content creators are more worried than actual parents, and it seemed to me that the real goal, or the real harm will be from parents who use their kids to make profit. I think that market on YouTube is really the one that will disappear fastest. If parents are using their kids to make videos for profit on YouTube, then they're the ones that will go away fastest, or they'll just have to go to YouTube for kids. So the other thing is, if you make content for kids, you're going to have to go to YouTube for kids. And I think that the other problem is that having kids have their online privacy, whatever that means, that YouTube cannot collect data from 12-year-olds. How do you know that a 12-year-old is using the phone or the desktop? How do we know that? Well, what they're saying is that your content can't be designated for 12-year-olds so that they don't find it. Well, it's all going to shift over to YouTube for kids. And I think that as long as you're making content targeted towards adults, don't really think you have as much to worry about unless you're in a very gray area like, I don't know, toy trains as a hobby. But also, I think you're being upset because all you want to do is make videos, and it's not fair that YouTube is making you do this. You have to look at it from YouTube's point of view, as YouTube pays for the hosting and serving of your content, which you don't pay for, you get for free. YouTube pays for that in two ways: with advertising, targeted advertising, and the way they use targeted advertising is by data mining. And so that data that they collect on users is valuable enough to YouTube to offset the costs of serving the content and hosting it. So you're getting a free service, and they're putting this restriction on you, not you personally, but content creators, so that if they can't mine your data through your content, there's no reason for them to host you for free. So why should they host content that they can't make money off of? That's really what's going to happen to all the child-oriented content. And that's just my 2 cents on that, and I just wanted to kind of clarify that. I might be wrong. If I am, you can clarify where I am on that. So thanks a lot.
And thank you, Shane. Very interesting thoughts right there. One thing that sometimes we do lose sight of is that, yes, YouTube is a great opportunity. And, yeah, the fact is, right, we don't have to pay the cost to maintain everything, to host the videos, and sometimes if you're lucky, you even get paid for it. So that is a great opportunity, but you're right, that is one of the biggest reasons why the targeted advertising, right, is so important in the grand scheme of things. But either way, I do think, like you were saying, those channels where they show out their kids like that, which many of those are awful, and the kids don't have any say in it. The kids are usually miserable. They don't want to even be in this, but, they're making mommy and daddy a lot of money, so they just gotta suck it up and deal with it. Sometimes it's to the point where it's near abuse. Probably full-blown, honestly, but let's not even talk about when the cameras are off. But what you see, some of it just disgusts me. Yes, I do. That is very, very vile in and of itself. And either way, those types of channels, of course, the ones that I would consider illegitimate, the ones that just, do these horrible misdeeds with their kids, I hope those things get taken down so fast. If anything is going to come of this, at least I hope that they go down with the ship as well. But sometimes, of course, you get an actual happy family that really just wants to make some content together. They'll get unfairly punished as well, because it is kid-directed, but yeah, interesting thoughts. And now to conclude the broadcast, let's go over to a few thoughts from Amy in the UK.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the COBA, the FTC. Me being a little creator myself, I'm only 20 subscribers, isn't much, but I'm just a beginner. And again, I like expressing how I feel, just talking about myself. And I'm only, just over 18, and I feel like I want to start doing anime more, drawing anime, I like drawing, and now, because of all this, I now feel like I cannot do it, and it goes towards everyone, for these beginners. Obviously there's so much to it, because you've got the bigger YouTubers that this is going to affect their, they could go bankrupt.